You're listening to The Women in the Arena. I'm your host, Paige Rene, former collegiate athlete turned leadership entrepreneur for women just like you. Each week, I'm bringing you a new person or message to help you expand and elevate into the woman you know you're meant to be. Now, let's step into the arena. Hey guys, welcome back inside the Women in the Arena. I know it's been a while since I've brought you a guest, but today will be really exciting because I want you to think about sitting in the living room with me and one of my business besties who we've connected with recently. And we have a lot to say and a lot to talk about, especially in the online space. So I'm really excited to welcome Blessing. She's a tech strategist, and some of the information she knows is going to blow your mind. So I'll do a great job at trying to simplify it because I do this to her all the time. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? So we'll get into it. And don't worry, I have you guys covered. Blessing, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Paige. I'm excited. I love that you preface this with, don't worry, I'll translate. Because I can get so excited that I just get like super geeky. And so it's nice to know that you're going to be mindful of that.
Well, and I think, don't you find the same though, when we're talking about what we love so much and you get in a role and you get really excited, it's hard to market the other side of that, which is like meeting somebody where they're at, which isn't necessarily where we're at. And so I feel like in marketing, at least, I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but that's really where I find a lot of challenges when it comes to not necessarily doing what we do, but marketing what we do. So can you tell us, like, what is a tech strategist and how did you come into this world?
Man, what is a tech strategist? I'm sure if you Google it, they'll be like, oh, it's a person who gives you strategy on technology. Sure. But, I think why I've kind of grown into that title is because of my background and my spread. So I taught myself to code when I was single digits. By the time I graduated high school, I was doing freelance web design, photography, graphic design, and then did that through college. Ended up joining a Fortune 500 company, a cloud company, and then did some startup stuff, did some nonprofit stuff. And all the while underneath it, I was doing my freelancing, right? And it's interesting in tech. And so it wasn't like I was running a full blown freelance business, and actually sunset that when I graduated college and got that job. But I kept working with different clients and different projects, mostly nonprofit, small business owners. And there was this massive tension at first between what I found my clients needed and then what I was doing at work. So when you're working at these massive organizations, and I advise anybody who's graduating college and you're thinking about getting into tech, I would say now do what my parents told me to do that I was not happy to do, which is go work at a medium to large company, because scale creates very interesting problems, right? When you look at tech innovation, you wonder why it's coming out of India and China and other countries right now. Their populations, like the scale of the country, demands creative solutions, right? AWS, why are they so innovative? Microsoft, the scale of their company creates interesting problems that need solutions. And so I tell anybody now, go ahead and go to medium to large company if you can. Get in there, take advantage of the benefits. They're still there. The salaries are still good. But the most important thing you can do is be exposed to different technologies and have different opportunities, because you just never know where you're going to find your niche. And so for me,
do you mean like, okay, so question coming in from elementary here. Do you mean like medium to large as far as like, if you're interested in tech, you should go for a big company because of the scale and what you're exposed to versus like a startup company?
I would say yes. Unless you're like risk tolerant to being at a startup. Or here's the benefit of the startup. So it's not always about the medium to large, because here's the trade-off. Large companies, you kind of wear like one role, one hat. They need you to do one thing. And so you getting the exposure you need is more like knowing how to maneuver kind of the political, career, tech side of things, right? Through the ladder. And a startup, everybody has like 15 roles, right? The roles of like a functioning company don't change just because it's small. And so depending on the startup, that's like getting, I wouldn't say hazed, but it could be like a crash course, and if you're a go-getter, like you'll get stuff done. You're not waiting around for people to tell you what to do, and you're naturally curious. A startup environment could be really, really great. And you're willing to put in extra time to work and learn to fill gaps, because you do have to do a lot. So it's like two different like working rhythms, right? But exposure looks different because in the startup, the whole company has a very narrow focus. right? They're making software really to produce money. And usually early on, it's a dire thing. So you just got to be about what the company's doing. Whereas an established company, they have like R&D and all these other things where there's some companies like Atlassian, I think either quarterly, they take almost like a week or something off just to do like research, update documentation, like no work, right? And that's because when they're that big, they can do things like that. And these big corporations can do things like that. So it's like totally different cultures, different experiences. But the big tech experience for me helped me understand what it looks like to look at business operations and automation at scale. Like that just was not something I was going to see, right? And even certain startups, because that's kind of techie, like super technical, right? It's a cloud company. And so there's not a lot of small startups in that space, and which is mind blowing. And so being at the job, seeing how these big companies approach technical operations and then translate that into business operations and like people doing automated work, I was like, wait, this is a whole level of automation that I've never seen, right? And then working with small clients and small business owners, me sitting down with them asking you, oh, what's your website? Okay. And then they would kind of tell me what they thought they wanted, like a carousel and some images. And over time, my question shifted to, okay, so are you trying to get this website to drive sales, right? Are we going to have a form on your website? Okay. When they submit this form, what system does it go to? Like, what's your CRM, right? All of a sudden, I began asking questions about the business and trying to fit the website in as a solution to people's sales and marketing process, right? Because I was understanding what it meant to have technology kind of integrate throughout your whole business, right? From, my big girl job. So it just shifted everything. So yeah, that was a bit of like an interesting detour. But yes, startups and large companies have different pros and cons, but anywhere where there's scale in the solutions that they have, you're going to find scale and like the things you can do, and your mind is going to be blown. And that changed everything for me. And then I was like, okay, well, we're building technology, and my career evolved into like software consulting and working, with more startups. And I was like, wait, we're doing things so like rudimentary. So there's this thing online, how to get like a website template? Well, they have app templates. Like whole templates you can use to build whole apps, like from scratch, or like no code app building, where you can essentially almost have a drag and drop experience for building apps, right? And I became so much more aware of like this other way of building technology that wasn't rudimentary, like writing every single line of code. And so now, while I was like mind blown in my cloud job, my career evolved. And then I was like frustrated at how far behind the industry was in actually building technology solutions and even building automated business systems. So in software consulting, we work with, I can talk about one project because it's public. I worked on a project with AWS and ExxonMobil, and that was a fun project, but we were building a business solution. And I looked at this product and I'm like, this is interesting that we have, I think at our height, we had more than 20 people across the globe, a couple countries building this product. At our smallest, it was like 3 of us based in Houston. And I'm like, wow, we really wrote a lot of this from scratch and we didn't need to. Like there are things like we could have invested less than like $500 to cop us. I mean, that is so much more like smaller than the total amount of investment to get to a functioning prototype and that crazy app. I was like, this is ridiculous. Now, granted, we had a big company involved. They had a bunch of needs and things, but I still looked at this from my freelance background and said, wow, if we had just used existing things on the market, right, that were free, open source, that you can build it almost like a website template, we probably would have saved at least 6 to 8 months of development time and prototyping and design and figuring it out. And then even when you bring in no code, it's like, so we're writing all this custom code in the cloud, but you could solve this using tools that are on the market now. And so it was really weird watching like being as technical as I was and as savvy as these team members were and going, this way of building solutions like this is defunct. And I don't know why we're still doing this, right? And with my clients, now I'm taking all those learnings and going, great. You have a small business. You're making $100,000 to $500,000 a year. You have a team of like 2 to 10 people. You don't need to build custom software. Give me like 2 weeks. And we can create this hub of business operations that integrates all of your business tools and that automates your client and your member interactions. It's like, this is where we are now. And corporate was behind it. It's still behind to some degree. And so it was just so interesting always finding that dynamic in my career where sometimes, corporate is ahead and sometimes it's not. And then with the different scale of problems, you're just like, no, there's a better way to do this. And I feel like now with AI and automation and everything that's out on the market right now, there's a lot of things that we can go, there's a better, cheaper, smarter way to do this.
Okay. That is where you blow my mind. So this is where I'm going to come in and like bridge the gap between what you're saying and where it's been so helpful for me is, so to give some of you guys listening in a backstory, Blessing and I connected in a program that we both invested in to help us launch a new part of our business or a new offer. And I saw where she had gone in, we're supposed to find accountability partners, and she had gone in and made a very simple, easy way for us to use this online tool to find an accountability partner. So she's offering this and I'm like, wait, how do I make her my accountability partner? Because I'm like, this is fantastic. And, knowing that my brain doesn't work that way. And so I think sometimes for like business owners or like women in general who don't have the expertise you do, or even the inclination to want to be an expert in that area, it feels debilitating or like stopping. But to be able to surround yourself with somebody like Blessing or find someone like her in your network is so valuable, because it's okay that your brain doesn't work that way, or it's okay that that's not your specialty. But where it's been so helpful is for me, and I think I've shared this with you, is when it comes to using like Chatgpt and at the next level. Everybody knows what Chatgpt is. Everybody, for the most part, knows that you can go in there, say, hey, how do I stay within these macronutrients? And it'll pop you out a grocery list and like, the back and forth there, whether that's a business back and forth or personal. But then you blew my mind when you took it a step further and taught me how to do the paid version and what that could do to make all these emails I've been writing so much quicker. So can you just share more about the advantages that you find with some of those, with like, let's talk Chatgpt, because I think the audience would like to know that a little bit more, because sometimes there's some resistance in using it because it's foreign or feeling like inauthentic. So can you talk to like some of those obligations and like how it's changed the game for you?
I think it's good to start with ChatGPT because it is now almost like a household name of like direct to consumer AI. And I word it that way because technically I would say, and a lot of technologists would tell you, that what we're calling AI is still really advanced machine learning. Right. And there's like a joke that says if you call it AI, it means that you just don't know what it is yet. Like it's machine learning. Right. And it's a language model. It's a predictive model. And so what it's doing is that given the amount of words you give it, it kind of just predicts what comes out next. Right. That's a really simplified way of describing it, but that's what's happening. And so ChatGPT is really cool because literally you can get it on your phone, download the app. It just released a new model. I think it's ChatGPT version 4 Omni, and it's now free for everyone, paid or not. And it's called Omni because unlike the other versions, you can go into this little chat window and you can ask it questions, but you can also like upload images and you can upload audio files and you can ask it to create images, right? You don't have to go to another app anymore. You could say, create an image with like, a purple sunset or whatever. It will just do it. And so it's called, I know, they just put out this update. So it's called Omni because it just brings it all together, right? In one place. And it's more of this, I think it's a better integrated assistant. Right.
Have you used this?
Yeah. I've been using it.
Oh my God. Have you used it in the launch or with the masterclass or anything?
So speaking of which, okay. So during the launch, so in this program we're in called Your Biggest Launch Ever, Jasmine Star has done an amazing job of teaching us how to do a launch. Now, I'm a big Jasmine Star fan. I wouldn't just say fan, just like really good supporter. I think I've been in the social curator community for maybe more than 5 years ish. It's been a minute. Yeah, it's been a minute. And I've watched the evolution of her program go from, oh, I give you photos to help your social media. I give you captions to help your social media. We provide coaching and membership and all this other stuff to, we're a SaaS company that now has a social media app that has AI integrated to help you write, plan, schedule your content. And they still publish a monthly magazine every month with new things to focus on and train you on and flex that marketing brain, right? And then they added AI to the app, which then lets you tell Dottie, that's the name of the AI, you give her a brief of your company, like your company, your voice and your tone, and then Dottie writes content essentially like you. So it's like ChatGPT in a social media app, right? So that's my whole bit. Social curated. Love it. The techie and me have to give a shout out for the evolution of that company because it's been amazing watching Jasmine and her team make that transition. It's not simple. It's very challenging, but I think they're doing it with grace in a way that makes it look deceptively easy. So there's kudos there. Now we're in her program about how to do this masterclass. And this is an amazing program. She's given us like these workbooks and roadmaps, and there are these sessions, and she has amazing slides. So I'm mentioning all this because this is all, to my brain, it's all information. It's all data. Every workbook we get, every roadmap we get, every set of slides we get, every Zoom call we attend with the transcripts from the Zoom call, right? That is all data. And so what I did was take all that information and go into Chatgpt and create a custom GPT. So on the paid model, you can create a custom GPT. This is essentially, let me put it this way. When you go into regular Chatgpt, you're using the general bot, right? This bot is kind of trained on whatever OpenAI made it trained on, right? It's a general bot. You can ask the questions. It'll give you its best answer. Sure. When you go and create a custom GPT, you can go in and begin to customize what it knows. And this is where things get very interesting, because what I did for this masterclass is I took all that information and I gave it to this custom GPT, and I told it, I want you to become a great coach for helping me produce my masterclass, my webinar, my sales page, and all these different pages and email templates, right? But I want you to refer exclusively to the documents I'm uploading.
See, the way that you could connect that blew my mind. And for you guys listening, I'll launch in June, or I think we're both hoping to launch in June, but Blessing's going to absolutely be part of the launch. So if you're like, how do I get more of her? This is a way, or she'll tell you at the end how. But anyways, yeah, keep going. Cause I like the emails. Okay. Let me just say this. The emails used to make me want to like rip my eyes out. Cause it's like, okay, you need to send like 20 emails over the course of like a week or two. And it's not even just the content that's challenging. It's just putting together like, this is day one at this time after the live. And here's what you say. And, you know, just creating all of those frameworks was just taking forever. And then when you told me that I could really like train the, what do you call it? The chat or the GP? What do you call it?
The custom GPT. And it's so cool because you just upload. So for context, the workbooks that we have, Jasmine's given us all the email templates, right? And it's like kind of fill in the blank a little bit, some structure. And so all I had to do was create that bot and then say, hey, create, you know, reference this email template on this page of the workbook, right? And so I'll tell the bot that and it will pull the email template. But I got annoyed at having to like tell the bot all the time, like what my business is, what I'm selling, what my masterclass is, or even say like my webinar, that masterclass I'm doing is not the same as the offer. So a little bit more about the program. We're using a webinar to sale method, right? For our offers or our launches, meaning that we want you to attend a webinar and we want to give you a webinar, one over delivers in value. So it's not a waste of your time, right? As a matter of fact, you're going to leave feeling like you got something, whether or not you work with us. But at the end, we're going to make a hard pitch because we run businesses. And I think we both believe that the world is better off with the thing that we do. Right. And so the goal is that we want to actually propose to you at the end of this webinar. This is what we do. This is how you work with us. And that's what we call the offer. What was really annoying at first was that the bot did not know the difference between the masterclass and the offer. And so it would conflate like, oh, join this masterclass and buy this thing. And it's like, wait. Like, I don't want to tell people to buy anything yet. Like, it's not right. Right. And so I would go into the custom ChatGPT and I told explicitly, my masterclass is not the offer. The offer is something I'm selling after the masterclass. And so when we work on my registration page for the masterclass, do not mention the offer. When I work on the offer, right, this is after the masterclass and it has separate copies. So do not mention the masterclass. And so simply being able to go in and just tweak the GPT like that in the instructions, it fixed it. And so now when I write my email templates and I tell it, hey, write my email template. By the way, here's a bit about my business. It will just fill in the email template using everything about my offer and my business. But yeah, I got super annoyed at telling it every time what my business was. And so I realized, like I upload other documents, I'm just going to add another PDF that describes my offer, my business name, my personal name, a little bit about my bio. I call it a brief and I put everything in there and then it just writes everything for me. I'm like, oh, customize email template number 7 for, my offer. And it just does it because it already has all the context.
And the thing you told me, because I remember us asking this question, some of the other women in the accountability group we're in, when, Blessing's basically giving us this free masterclass on Chatgpt. It was like, my biggest question was, well, what's the difference between paid and what we have access to now? And it's that it remembers your information versus, and you're not having to continually update it, right? With your information every time you go back to use it.
That's true. And so it's so funny, memory and GPTs. So AIs, we call them AIs. We think that they're all smart, but they're not really like brains. They have a memory limit and it's not as much as you think it would be. And so sometimes if you notice when you're using a GPT, the longer you have a conversation and the more you try to refer to things further back, it gets really fuzzy and starts making things up. And that's because the GPTs essentially have a memory window. And most of the AIs do, regardless of what company you're using. Most of them have a memory window, right? And so recently, before this last update, OpenAI added another update, which actually has a memory feature. So as you're using ChatGPT now, it will commit certain things to memory. And so that's what it will load every single time you start a new conversation.
You guys, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I had very few examples of women in leadership positions. And sometimes when I shared what I was building with my friends or with my coworkers at the time, they just didn't really get it. Even when I wanted to create some new goals and talk about those ambitions, I didn't feel like I had a community of women to share that with, which is why I found an online community of other multi-passionate, like-minded women. If you can relate, join us in our Rise Facebook community where you get free weekly coaching, a network of amazing women who are also in the arena, and you're the first to know about the latest offers. Women leaders rise together. See you inside our Rise Facebook community. You can find the link in the show notes. Though just means like the vault that it's constantly pulling from still.
Yes. So this is really cool about like the actual memory feature now. You can have different chats with ChatGPT, over weeks, months. And as you have these conversations, it will pull out things to remember. So regardless of what conversation you're in, it's literally like a brain, a memory brain, and it will just keep remembering who you are and what you do and different things you tell it.
Do you have to tell it which things to remember in specific? Like, hey, remember this is my offer?
I wonder if you can, but I realize like so far it seems automated. Like it figures out this is important and then it remembers it. But then you can always go back to the memory and be like, okay, delete this. Like, I don't need you to store this. So it's kind of like having your account has its own custom GPT now, like over everything. And then you can still create like really targeted GPTs to do certain things, like the masterclass one that I made. So it's very interesting, like the concept of memory and AI. But to keep it really simple, ChatGPT now does remember certain things, and it should make it a better experience overall using it.
If you're a business owner listening to this, or if you're interested in creating more expedited processes for what you're currently doing, you definitely want to reach out to Blessing. So, okay, question for you. Well, actually, you can reach out to me because I can probably give you the dumb version. She's going to give you the like more sophisticated PhD version.
I'm geeking out. I'm just geeking out. I could do a simpler version.
I know you could, but I also was thinking about like your client intake when I said that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have a bunch of people knocking at her door about ChatGPT. But tell us about the offer that you're working on now. Like who specifically you want to work with and like, what are you offering?
So that's funny. There's two offers that I'm working on. The one that I'm going to, launch soon, probably around the time that you do your launch, is around helping people create a sales hub. So I think most of us are online business owners. I'm going to make assumptions about the people who are going to find me. That you're an online business owner. You have a team of at least 2 people, probably 2 to 10 people, mixed with contractors, maybe a handful of full-time employees. But essentially, you're online. Your whole business is online. And what I mean by that is, if y'all don't get on Slack or some sort of group message, like nothing's happening, right? You are a virtual office. You need a digital hub. And I find that most small businesses need 2 hubs very quickly. They need a sales hub and an ops hub. And I'm working with the sales hub first. And I think that's the first thing most small online businesses struggle with, because you end up doing digital sales. And I feel like if you don't own it intentionally, then digital sales happens to you. And then like you're making money, but then 3 months, 6 months, 12 months in, you don't have like a view of like how I made my money. How are people like, where are they coming in and finding me? Okay, what stage in the sales process are people in? Like that gets lost if you don't attack it and say, I want to be intentional about what happens when somebody is even interested in working with me, or this person goes from a potential business opportunity to like an actual one where I know what I'm going to sell you now, right?
Yeah. I didn't know I was going to be exposed or called out during this. So I'm loving this information.
It's so interesting because I struggle too. Like, how do you not use the word CRM, which is so funny because in our masterclass training, I use that language because I think it's more normal coming from corporate to online business versus coming from organic entrepreneurship into online business. And I'm learning more, especially at that conference that I spoke at, I'm learning more like the difference in how people approach business from those two angles, right? And so CRM, which is a customer relationship management tool, by the way, that word is so conflated. It does not mean the same thing across softwares, across businesses, across industries. I'll digress because that's a different thing. But CRM generally means it's a software tool to help you manage your relationships with your customers or your clients over time, which simply means emails, tracking when's the last time you talked to them, calendar events, things like that, right? That's the simplest CRM that you're going to get. But now you add a sales pipeline on top of it. And so not only do you want to know, when did I talk to somebody, but it's also like, okay, are we at the point where you express interest, maybe through a form, or I met you at an event and then I need to follow up with you? Or are we at the point where I need to do a pitch call to actually tell you like what services I have and what I think will work? Do I have to send you a proposal now? Right? So CRMs with sales kind of dip into managing that whole sales pipeline as well. And so with that offer, I think it's going to be pretty good because it's just taking stuff I've been doing and kind of more general projects, because right now I do all custom project work, and really consolidating that into a framework and a method for getting it done. And so I'm really excited because honestly, like once you have a sales hub, which I keep using hub, and I mean, that's like just a set of software tools you use for your sales, then I mean, it just makes the world go round. And it's like, oh, I might have like a Dubsado or a Honeybook or, you know, even a Salesforce or a HubSpot, right? And you might think that's enough. But what I find is that sometimes those tools aren't enough when you get past your first 1 to 2 years in business. And now you're looking at like historic sales. You want to know, as my offers have changed and the prices have changed, is there seasonality with what I'm selling? Is there a commonality between certain kinds of customers, right? Like for me, I can say I'm selling my sales hub, but if I don't track what industries my customers are in, and what kind of like results that we got in our sales hubs and other things like who referred them to me. If I don't track any of that, there's no way for me to later look at the data that tells me how successful my offer is for certain people. Does it make sense to niche down? Should I not niche down, right? I'm going to ask all these questions. I'm going to go off intuition. And in truth, without data guiding that intuition, it's just a lot of bias and feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely very skewed. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so if I'm in Kajabi, I'm definitely like asking a personal question with my business. So if I'm in Kajabi and that's where my clients go to enter into the course, but I also do workshops and things where I'm sending it like billing directly from PayPal, is there a way to integrate both of them? Because Kajabi would be my CRM, right?
It would. Well, if you're using Kajabi as a CRM, yes. But I would say if we're looking at just your membership, that's fair because Kajabi is going to handle, you know, the full scope of whatever we're going to do with any member, right? It's going to help them sign up, automatically add them to the right course. Like it handles it really well. There's no reason to go outside of it for membership. But let me ask this. Do you have one-on-one clients? Mm-hmm. Do you have an overlap between people who go to membership and possibly buy your one-on-one services?
Yep.
Does Kajabi capture those two business revenue streams?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was like. I'm like, you're exposing a challenge that I have as I'm like listening to you talk about, okay, collecting the data. I'm like, I don't know that I have a seamless way to do that.
And that's where a dedicated CRM comes into play. So one, everybody should simplify their tools. So I'm not going to tell you to go get 100 apps, even though I really recently just made an app directory of 70 apps, which is really funny. But my goal is not for you to download every single app and have 50 subscriptions. What I think happens is that as we add revenue streams to our business, we don't realize like the customer journeys are different. The sales journeys are different. Even sometimes your administrative stuff is different. And we don't realize that the tool itself, even though it has features, when you put those features together, it doesn't actually give me the solution I want. Right. And so for Kajabi to PayPal, you could integrate that for sure. You could have, like a Zapier that goes in and says, okay, for these members at this time, when I do something here, go send them an invoice on PayPal, generate that invoice. That's fairly possible. But then I would go back and kind of ask different questions. I'd be like, okay, that's possible, but is it that you're just trying to send random invoices for people who happen to be in Kajabi? Or is there something that's giving you a reason to do that, to send those PayPal invoices?
It's something outside. I mean, that's mostly like when I'm doing Enneagram workshops in the corporate space, that's a whole different journey. That's like usually word of mouth or through my email. And then it's me sending the invoice and they pay through PayPal, but nothing's integrated with Kajabi at that point. Okay.
So I'm going to venture then. You don't have a single pane of glass to see all your customers and what they're purchasing, when they're purchasing it. Okay, great. So that's where the hub, that's why I've come up with the hub, right? Because you want it. Because you want the one place to go in and see all that stuff. And so that's like kind of the reporting side of it, the insight part of it. But with these modern tools, it becomes far more than a reporting system, right? Because with an app like Airtable, maybe a bit with Notion. I like Notion a lot for writing. I don't like it for data and automation, because the features are different. But you can pull some of this stuff off with Notion. And I do not want the Notion community to come for me, because I know y'all can make it happen. It's just not my preference. Okay. So first and foremost, do not fill up my inbox with that nonsense. Okay. But Notion can do some of this. Coda can do a lot of this really well. Airtable can. I'm naming some of these tools because these are tools that were designed to be business databases. And Smart Suite is a new one that I'm really starting to enjoy. And the reason why I mentioned this is because you can set up your system in a way where every time somebody goes to Kajabi and they sign up and create an account, we copy that information and we put it into a database of your members inside of, your Coda database. And we have a members database and we add that, and we even track their Kajabi member ID, right? And we give it a place. And then every time they make a purchase, we could sync those purchases in from Kajabi into that same Coda document, right? This is where things get really, really fun. Now, if you have another process where you're working with people to do these corporate Enneagram assessments, right, and workshops, then what system do you manage that through?
Those are just through my email.
Oh, great. And do they go to your website and fill out a form, or is it literally just like somebody inboxes you?
No, they just inbox me. How much is it? Can you do this date? And then we go.
Is there a lot of negotiation back and forth?
It's not necessarily on price, more so on like, how's this going to be effective within like how we meet as a team.
Okay. So I'm going to throw something out here. It sounds like there's initial inquiry and you do the back and forth. Is it over email or is there a call?
It's over email. Okay. But I'll do a call if they request, but mostly over email.
So initial inquiry, you sort out the details via email, and then you send a confirmation. But in between the confirmation, there's payment, right?
I send an agreement for them to sign that everything's like right. And then they do a split payment. So they do like 50% at the front and 50 at the back.
Okay. This is really cool. Agreement and then payment. Okay, cool. So technically, everything from the agreement to payment and even the payment processing could be handled by sales CRM, right? You could bring in another system to handle that. Or if we take all that information into Coda and set it up to where when you get an email, and there's different levels of automation. So I'm going to start with the first one, basic one. Email comes into your inbox. You take that email, you go into Coda and you have this table for, your Enneagram workshops. And you go in there in that database and you add in, this is the person's name. This is where it came from. And now I'm tracking it, right? I'm tracking this interaction like it's a deal. Great. And then you put it in like the negotiation stage where you're going back and forth and figuring out the details. And so you literally like a Kanban board or like a Trello, you just drag it over and say, okay, great negotiation. Now you're tracking it somewhere, right? The moment you are ready to then send that agreement over, really, really cool, because Coda's not just a database. You could have a button in Coda that says create contract and it goes off and it generates that contract, right? Now, how you generate the contract, I don't want to get into those bucket of worms, but there's different ways to create it. And you could actually, it's so funny because depending on your agreement and how it works, you could have Coda essentially generate the contract and create the PDF and then attach it to the email for you and send it all from Coda. Like, this is why I'm like, database tools are one thing, but when you start looking at these business automation tools, they bring the data and the automation together in one place. And you can do that without having to use Zapier in between. No, you would not. Now, unless there's legal reasons why you want like the e-signature chain of DocuSign, right? So there's some times where clients are like, no, we have other business operations, we have other teams, the larger you get, or you have contractors or legal obligations to use certain things, right? Maybe HIPAA, whatever. So there, you want to use certain tools, but these hubs can help you replace those tools and go, wait, I don't need DocuSign. Now, another app that I love is called e-signatures, and that's because you pay 99 cents a contract and that's it. But they have templates and all this other stuff that you can automate and integrate and even like set up where it redirects automatically after. And so literally, and I love e-signatures too, because they made their software so that your contracts are made mobile first, not like computer first, meaning that it actually shows up on a mobile app and you can read it. It's literally, I mean, this should not be this novel. I should not be excited about this in 2024, but it's annoying how many e-signature tools in business proposal software does not handle mobile views. And I'm like, if this is not, it's frustrating because even when I did photography, I'm like, guys, this is not rocket science. Like, this is not like a 6-month project that's valued over $20,000 that's going, it's not like that. It's not like that. Why? So they're simple, like e-signature tools. And fun bit, I'm just throwing out, I'm so excited about all the things. Google, I think, is taking their e-signature solution out of beta, which means that now with your Google Workspace plan, you could actually generate contracts with embedded like signing fields and other things too now. Right. So even they have a system where maybe it's not fully automated for now, but you could still have a template, hit a button, create this signing thing, take that link and dump it in the email. Right. And then Coda would still generate the whole email, send it to them. And so it's just so interesting when you have all your data in one place, because your data's together, the automation becomes natural. Because once you put it into that hub, the hub knows who the person is. The hub knows the email. The hub knows that it's in the negotiation stage. So then the hub knows the moment that you hit send contract, it will update this to, contract sent status. And then with further integrations, once the contract is signed, you can have it automatically change the status to say the contract is signed. Right. And so you streamline that one revenue stream, but then don't forget, we still have our membership. So now you streamline your workshop revenue stream and you have your membership data syncing it from Kajabi. You now have one place now to go to see all of your sales.
Oh, this sounds wonderful. And so this is what the first part of your YBLE launch is turning into, is a sales hub.
It is me helping business owners, pretty much this conversation, helping them understand and identify what that sales hub is, but more so the problem that the sales hub solves, right? Because it's a problem, like you mentioned, you're like, oh yeah, I have this problem. It's a nuisance. But like, you probably haven't put the words to it to go, oh, I'm annoyed because my business, like managing my sales and income, is split. Like, I have different revenue streams and it feels fractured and therefore it feels laborious. And then I'm not able to easily go back and look at and say, okay, how many sales came from what this quarter?
Right. That's the frustrating part too, because it's like, I'll get the question from clients too, is like, what is your breakdown, and like, how do you track your revenue? And truly my answer is more of like, or I don't know if that they come from clients because I work with like new business owners, but it's more about whenever I get the question, I'm frustrated at myself for not having spent much time to like put that dashboard together, if you will. But it's not something I really want to spend time with. It's like, oh, I'm making sales, I'm doing fine. But it's the same thing with Chatgpt. It's like, oh, well, I'm writing and I'm figuring it out. But it's like, why wouldn't you want to do it quicker? That's kind of where I'm at with this. It's like, why wouldn't I want to do that quicker or have that information at my fingertips? And so didn't know I was getting a free discovery call with our conversation today. It's really great.
That's so cool. Oh no, it's just so interesting. Like the sales problem and then the ops problem, which, I'm not launching with that. I think the ops hub is going to be something that sits behind my retainer, because the ops hub really is about you getting your operations across your team together. So we all have an ops hub, honestly. It's your Slack, it's your Google Workspace, it is your project management tool when you're working with, your team members and contractors. You do have all the software that does your operations. But I think that is far more custom to how you run your business because it's your operations, right? And so that hub is really coming in together and bringing not just your sales, because you're going to connect your sales to your ops hub, essentially, but it's going to handle other things like for your membership, you might ask people to share testimonials for their wins, right? This has nothing to do with sales. It's post-sale. It's part of your business operations and you fulfilling the promise of your membership program. If you put that in your ops hub, that's amazing data. To have an ops hub where you send them a form, they fill out the form, and automatically that testimonial goes into your hub. It's there, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant. But I also think it's brilliant that you're starting with the sales hub, because somebody that's newer to working with you, and typically like, in entrepreneurship, like you definitely want an ROI right away. So it's a lot easier to sell something that's going to help you with your sales versus something that's going to help you with your operations. But once somebody works with you and figures out like, oh, this is brilliant, then the operations piece is like a no-brainer after that. I think that's a really smart way to put it together.
Yeah, for sure. And my personal frustration with kind of re-engaging with being in an online business, because I did this when I was in high school, like the software wasn't here. The sophistication of like the YouTube videos and tutorials, nothing was here, okay? I had a physical binder with every sheet for every client that I worked with, and I took notes in, okay? That was it. This is different. It's a different world. And so I think when you're starting out in business, if you go down the guru coaching, even the tech rabbit holes, right? You might feel like it's worth making that $5,000 investment to just get your business off the ground. And I actually think for most businesses, it's not worth it, because you actually have to figure out how you make money first, and you can prove profitability that people will pay you for something repeatedly without having your operations in order, right? You can do that. And so once you figure out how you make money, and you figured out what 1 or 2 or 3 things you're going to commit to selling, and then you've done it enough times to actually have a process for how you do something, then the ops hub is what, really comes into view, and it makes sense. Because here's the other thing about data and automations. I think people sometimes feel, oh, it's virtual, we can just like tear it down and build it up again. And I'm like, no, it's a virtual house that you're really building, right? And in no world do you lay down a foundation, plumbing, brickwork, and then say it's cheap to knock it all down and do it again. And that's what doing reporting and automations are, right? It is essentially taking the structure that you have, and then we're working with that structure, and now we're optimizing it, right? We're making assumptions. We're like, oh, your data lives in Kajabi. That's where your members are, right? You said that, your workshop stuff is in email, but then you also said it in PayPal. So we're going to make hard assumptions that all your payments are now running through PayPal. If we come back later and say, well, I really want to use Stripe, well, people change tech all the time, but the cost is different now because we've built a system that assumes Kajabi, like members come from Kajabi, payments are going through PayPal, we're using DocuSign for contracts. And so all these things are integrated with these assumptions. And then we say, okay, great. So the way we're using these things changes. We have 3 different apps. We're getting rid of 2 of them. It's a whole new project. You're essentially starting all over again with your digital operations project. And so that's why I'm like, be slow to do it.
No, and I love that you say that too, because I have found like in working with other business owners, like even some of the women in our accountability group, it's some people teach, from what I find in like just kind of like polarity, it's like have your system set up and then like kind of start selling once you feel like you have that set up, or like start selling and then figure it out. And I'm so much more in that like area of like, let's make a signature offer and repeat it, like prove to yourself that you can make income, and then we'll tighten up the processes. But it's debilitating if you spend so much time on your business versus in your business. And then you're like, okay, well, I have invested this much and now I'm trying to make income. It's like, I feel like it's swapped. So I love that you explained it that way, because I mean, validating for what I did, started and then made money and then made it messy and then figured it out, and then versus the other thing. So it's really helpful. So the pod here too, and I don't even know if I shared this in the beginning, is the women in the arena. And it's really women going for what they want to do and what they feel passionate about doing, just like you're rattling off and in the flow about what you do in your offers as a tech strategist. So the question that I always end with when I ask anybody on the podcast to be here and to have this conversation is, what does it mean to be a woman in the arena to you, and how would you define that?
Gosh, I think it feels like I'm where I was always meant to be. And kind of going back to my story, I was that kid who was told, you're so bossy. And it was a compliment to me because what else would I be? Right. And I think I knew really early on that I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. Right. And I wanted that autonomy and power, which is why, when I was in high school, and so I grew up in a fairly traditional Nigerian home. I mean, more traditional than it needed to be, in my opinion. It was interesting. And you'll hear why really soon. My parents would say things like, my mom particularly, my dad didn't say it. I don't know what he thought, but he didn't say it. My mom would say things like, if you don't learn how to clean your home, then your husband, you're going to get married one day. He's just going to bring you back. And like culturally though, like it's not, it was like petrifying to hear at like 16 or 17. I was like, what do you mean? What man would I be with that would think bringing me back is an option? First of all, that would think that it's my job to clean and that the response when I don't clean is to bring me back. I was like, it was an assault to hear those to my ears. It was a lot. Right. But the messaging was like, you have to be a woman who takes care of your household. Right. And that includes doing chores. And so we grew up on a chore schedule, rotating like weekly, who was cooking, who was cleaning. Like we did chores growing up. Right. And at some point I realized like, I don't like doing this. I don't like having idle hands because idle hands means there's more chores to do. Like, why am I the one doing my sister's chores? Well, because you do them so much better. That's because I do. Mom, you should go teach the other siblings how to do good chores then. Since we're all assigning motherly, womanly roles around the house, you teach your children how to do good cleaning. I got popped a lot in the mouth, by the way. But I realized because my hands are idle, I need to do something. And so that's when I started formalizing my tech skills and started getting clients. And I remember the first time I made money and I got paid, it was probably like $200. My mom was like, so you've been on this computer dodging all these chores, but you're making money? She was like, okay. That was the last time I ever heard you need to be doing this so you could be a good wife. It was Blessing's working. Don't disturb her when she's working, right? And of course, my dad's an engineer. He's, technologist by trade. And so he was very pleased to see that I was getting into technology. So that wasn't a point of contention, but it was just me taking that thing to say, I'm going to learn this and then I'm going to make money doing this. And then I always try to make money. So I wasn't dependent on my dad to like ask. Cause if you had to ask him for something, then he had to fund it. Then you really needed his permission. Whereas if I didn't need his money, the permission was negotiable. Like it wasn't like he just didn't care, but it was all about presentation at that point. Like, no, I have the money. No, I've orchestrated a ride to get there. I don't need anything for you, but for you to be aware of what is happening and that is not illicit and it won't bring shame on the family. That's all I need you to understand. Right. And that's how I got autonomy. And so that kind of growing up, it just shaped my mind around me owning my own outcome. Right. Going corporate was just, it was an interesting thing. Yes, I built skills. Yes, I had exposure, but I found that the corporate and even being employed to some degree environments, it wasn't what I really desired from the beginning. And by the time I got there and I got into these comfortable roles with benefits and the thing I hated the most was, you hear my voice, I hated this. It was those damn quarterly reviews. Like they sit there and they're like, what do you want to do 5 years from now? And me, as open and naive as I was, not be here. That's literally the answer, almost verbatim. I don't see myself here. I see myself doing other things. And early on in my career, that was it, full stop. And then I realized like, okay, no matter what they say, they're really interested about your work, your trajectory in the company. So I was like, well, I'm looking for alignment with, these things I'm interested in outside of work, but what I'm doing in work. Right. And I found that the more I moved through management, there was so much more like politicking and just things that I'm like, I'm spending all this energy to get the promise that you're pitching me about how this is a great environment. And even hearing words from some employers, like, it's not like this anywhere else. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it's just, and then I realized, wait, I don't actually thrive in this environment because what I want to thrive in is something totally different from what you're offering me. And so I was actually dying on the inside, piece by piece, essentially whittling away at all my interesting edges to fit into this weird peg. And all of that kind of bubbled up around some interesting I won't go into detail, but some interesting things around me being promoted and how I, unlike my other non-African American peers, had to show a level of competence. And, I thought that was a factor. And then I heard through the grapevine that it was. And then I decided, you know what? We did not immigrate across 2 countries and have so many dreams deferred for this to still be an issue today. And I was like, am I going to go find the truth about what happened and figure out who really said what and create a whole HR thing out of it? Or am I simply going to leave? Because at that point, I'd already realized I don't want what you're offering. And now the perks of staying no longer outweigh, the pros and the cons. Like that math doesn't math anymore for me. Right. And so at that time, I was like, it's time to go into the job market. And in the span of that year, I changed my job. I had 3 different W-2s that year. My salary almost tripled by the end of that year. And it ended, though, in me being essentially fired from a CTO position at a small nonprofit that thought that a product leader was the same as an internal IT person. And it was a really misunderstanding what it was. And so it was good. It was good that I was fired because it wasn't a good fit. Right. And it was not only good that I was fired because it wasn't the right fit. It was actually the worst employee experience I'd had because I was for the first time hired into a role that I actually did not have the skills to do. And it's this weird thing in tech where people think tech is tech. Like everything's technology. Like you could help fix my printer, right? You could do my business operations, and you could also you could run my business operations, and then you could help me build this app at the same time and manage these 2 things. And I think small businesses often conflate too that when software is a revenue generating thing and when it's a cost center. What we're talking about with, automations and, CRMs and stuff, that's a cost center for your business. You're spending money looking for an intangible result that looks like efficiency and profit and other things, right? But the building software is a revenue generating activity where it is directly related to you making money. Those are 2 different things in your business. They're not the same. And so what ended up being, I think at the time, a very scary experience, being let go 2 weeks before Christmas and being like, what is happening? Oh, it was wild. It was so wild. It turned into a lot of learning for me and realizing okay, now I'm at a point where I can choose to go back into the job market. And this was at the beginning of the crazy onslaught of IT hiring that happened, or tech hiring, I should say. Or I can finally go out on my own and own this, right? And so that's what I decided to do, and finally walk into the life that I've always wanted since I was a kid, but being positioned to do that because I have an amazing husband who is not only a partner in life, but his background is also in sales and IT and hardware. So he's more like the actual IT guy, hardware, right? And I'm software, but building technology and integrations. And so it's not a perfect Venn diagram of all the things, but it's more than enough, right? And so I'm we ended up just coming into a season where it made sense and it worked. And so I said, yes, why not do it? And so I think me being a woman in the arena is finally living the life and building the life that I've always wanted and that I know I'm capable of, right? Yes, the journey was windy and bendy and all these other things, but I'm where I'm supposed to be. And it's just me owning it. I don't have to be anyone else or do anything extra, right? I have the credentials. I have the skill. I have the network. I have the support. At this point, it's just for me to say yes and keep moving forward. And so that's it to me. Just keep saying yes and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I literally just wrote down 3 different nuggets because I'm just this is so valuable. And I love how, authentically and organically you talk about your process and where you're at. And I think it's really valuable to hear. And so I thank you for sharing that. And if somebody is okay, how do I get involved with what Blessing's offering and dive into her world? What's the best way to do that? Where do you want people to connect with you?
You can find me on, I'm going to say Threads. I don't know if people are really shouting out Threads yet, but I'm a Threads girl. Look, Instagram life is a different kind of life right now. And I'm there. I'm at Threads at Blessing Effect. So Blessing EFFECT. And then Instagram at the same handle. You can find me there. And you also find me online at sayla.co. That's SAYLA.co. And those are my digital spaces. There's more, but if you go to those 3, you'll find me.
You'll find more. Yeah. And we'll have that information in the show notes for you guys. So you can just scroll down and check that out. Blessing, every time we have a conversation, I'm just like very excited and walk away with so much information. So I really, really appreciate your time today and navigating your COVID cough and using your tea and sharing your insights with us. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait for us to do another one. I'm sure we'll have a good conversation, like post launches, and just talking about, okay, so we put all this investment into doing these launches. Let's talk about how things went sideways, but we survived.
Honestly, that's brilliant. We might need to do a roundtable with like our whole group because we'll need to unpack that. So awesome. Okay. So thank you guys so much for being here and listening to us, and Blessing again. Thank you for literally blessing us with so many nuggets. I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey in the arena. Make sure to check out the show notes in the description for a rundown of today's show with all the important links. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. I know how much it means to me when my friends share podcasts. Leave us a review and let us know what landed with you over on Instagram at Paige_Rene15. As always, your best bet is on yourself.